Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. So let's see who's on the stream tonight. We have Enzo the God. Great to see you, Enzo. Hope you're well. We have Raven 1983 Witch. Great to see you too. Killer, great to have you on. Thanks for moderating once again. We have the Chatty Rat. Great to have you on, Chatty. We have, let me see, Susan. Great to have you on. Sorry, not Susan. Suzanne. It's great to have you on, Suzanne. We have FSM is the dog. FSM definitely is the dog. A face that I could do with a slap. Cathy Doyle, great to see you. Derek, great to have you on. We have, let me see, Tiny Demolition Lover, great to have you on. Hope you're well tonight. Let's see, we also have CGM, great to have you on, CGM. Hope you're well too. Zoe Castles, great to see you, Zoe. Lenan, great to have you on. Have fun. I'm hiking, camping in a few days. That's great. Matt Greek, great to see you. We also have Tom, great to have you on, Tom. Hope you're well tonight. We have, who else? Conservator, great to see you, Conservator. Archangel, great to see you too. Kendo, great to see you. Matthew, Simon, great to see you. Reagan Elite, great to have you on. Hope you're well tonight. Gingers, great to see you. Well, we're up to 143 viewers. Remember, guys, to smash that like button. Asperger, great to see you. Aki's Mad, great to have you on. Catherine, great to see you. Whoa, something happened. Something jumped down to the bottom. Don't know why that happens. Mr. Spoon says, Max, your video on the the European look on Outlook was excellent. Thank you very much for that. It was a culmination of different things. I think it was time to do something like that. It should have actually happened perhaps on Wednesday, because it was the date, but there were a lot of things happening at the same time. So, and then I had to put in Fool of the Week as well. I hope you guys enjoyed Fool of the Week. Dido Harding, not as funny as usual, but still a fool. And then we have somebody on tonight. That's great. So let's. I want to say hello to everyone. Remember, guys, to smash that like button. If you want to support the channel, you can also hit me with super chat, and I'll read it out on the stream tonight. Anyway, let's jump into the news now. Some people would probably see this as a distraction. Convince the public to look away from the disaster that's Boris Johnson, Brexit, and the rising cases of COVID in the UK at the moment, which is extremely concerning. So let's have this image of Matt Hancock not respecting social distancing. His hands are on face, but there was no space. So it just says here the key points. So Hancock keeps his job as Boris Johnson accepts apology and considers the matter closed. So Boris Johnson has decided this issue is closed, so we need to stop talking about it and start talking about something else. I don't think it's closed, but unfortunately I don't see anything really happening here. Boris Johnson has come to Matt Hancock's aid and said he's going to stay, so he's going to stay. I really would like to know what would actually be sufficient for firing, because handing out contracts to your friends is not sufficient for firing. Breaking social distancing rules or undermining the pandemic fight that the government has in front of them, that's not a sackable offence. Remember Dominic Cummings. So at what stage will somebody like Matt Hancock? Matt Hancock was even called fucking hopeless by his own boss. That wasn't enough to have him laid off. So what would he actually have to do? Hands, face, disgrace. So a health secretary says he's very sorry for breaching social distancing rules. Not just the social distancing rule that's the problem here. Labour reiterates call for spineless Johnson to sack senior minister. Majority think Hancock should resign over affair allegations. YouGov poll finds, yeah, he has to resign over that, but he also has to resign over undermining government policy. What are the COVID rules at the time of Hancock's embrace? Who is Gina Coladangelo, the taxpayer-funded advisor in the alleged affair? She's probably earning about £6,000 a day, while nurses are on less than £100 a day. Matt Hancock's messy month, from being called effing hopeless to alleged affair, and then not in national interest for Hancock to resign, says former Conservative Party leader. They're rallying around him to make sure that he doesn't take the chop. But as I said before, Boris Johnson has an 80-seat majority, so there's nothing really can be done about this. If it was on a knife edge, Hancock would be gone, because it would risk bringing down the government. But as Boris Johnson is completely invulnerable at the moment, he's going to allow Hancock to stay. And then what's going to happen is the news cycle will change and we'll start talking about something else. Let me read some of your chats. Johnson can hardly be the nation's father of public morals. Well, he's a father of many people. Doesn't even know how many there are, so he's a father of something, but of public morals, no. Disagreeing in public with the Prime Minister, calling the Prime Minister a nutter, maybe. More like Hans arse embrace. Monkeytron, good to see you on the stream. Kendra, good to see you too. It stinks so badly, yes. Her husband got COVID relief. So what's happened as well is, I think her brother runs a company that received contracts. So we're going to see that in a moment. No, before we get to this, I want to show you this clip. This is from 2012, where Matt Hancock was suggesting, Professor Neil Ferguson, well, he was right to resign because he broke the lockdown rules, or he broke the rules regarding COVID. But Matt Hancock is not going to resign. So I just want to show you this quick clip from Sky News from last year.
And I think that it's I think that he took the right decision.
You wouldn't have
to resign.
Yeah, you wouldn't have fought to keep him.
It's just not. That's just not possible in these circumstances.
But it's okay for Matt Hancock to stay. It's okay it's not okay for others to stay, but it's okay for him to stay. Daily Blase, great to see you on the stream. Hope you're well. Anyway, let's move on. So this is about the apology from Matt Hancock.
More on our top story and Matt Hancock there. Downing Street says the Prime Minister has accepted Health Secretary Matt Hancock's apology for breaching social distancing guidelines and considers the matter closed. Asked whether Boris Johnson had full confidence in Mr Hancock, the spokesman has replied yes. So Downing Street accepts Matt Hancock's apology for breaching social distancing guidelines and considers the matter closed. Mr Hancock spoke to...
So Matt Hancock is apologising to whom? He's apologising to Boris Johnson. He's apologising to the government for breaking the rules. And they're accepting his apology. Like, if you break the rules, you get punished. If he breaks the rules, all he has to do is say sorry. We've said this before. There's one rule for them, another rule for everyone else.
To Sky's Kay Burley back in September, you'll remember, urging couples from separate households to abide by the letter and the spirit of the guidelines.
It just means that people need to be careful, right? People need to be sensible, and if you're in a relationship that is well established, that's what it means.
Is that like 6 months?
What it means is people realising that by coming into close contact with people in other households, then that is how the virus spreads. I wouldn't suggest bending the rules. I would suggest sticking to them letter and spirit.
So don't bend the rules. Stick to the rules. Stick your hands, to the on the rules. Oh my God. Now, of course, we can laugh this off about him being caught, with an aide, but it's much more serious than that. This aide has contacts to businesses who receive contracts from the NHS, which is not exactly surprising, as you can imagine. They set a poor example, morally bankrupt. I agree. The cheese factor. Long live the monarchy. Which monarchy? If you are in several relationships, not seeking, offering an apology to his wife. Yes. That would have been very difficult for her to see, wouldn't it? She opens the Sun. I imagine she reads the Sun. She's a Tory, so she reads the Sun, and she sees a picture of her husband groping an aide. But then maybe she already knew about this. Maybe this was already out in the open, and it was just a matter of time. But we'll have to wait and see. She's got huge tracts of land. I love the Monty Python's reference there. Carry on corrupting. We're deep down the killer rabbit hole now. Good to see you, Sugar Free. Hope you're well. Make him stand behind the plant. Yeah, it'd be a horrible day for her, but she made some terrible decisions. Like, I really don't understand what people see in these Tories.
Turn to that story of the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock. You remember he's been pictured embracing an aide and breaking those social distancing rules of the time that was back in early May. We're going to go over to Mark Kleinman now, who's got some breaking news on this, and it involves, Mark is on the phone with us. Mark, it involves Gina Coladangelo's brother and a string of NHS contracts, doesn't it?
Yes, that's right. What I can reveal today is that a relative, in fact, the brother of the Whitehall director, alleged to have had an extramarital affair with Mr. Hancock, is an executive at a private healthcare company which has won a string of NHS contracts. Now,
and there we have it. So, do you think she was helping Matt Hancock deal with the stress he's been under after all these months? Because she's infatuated with him, or that she was trying to help her brother, who has had contracts with the NHS, who's offering services to the NHS? Is that not a sackable offence? Corruption? This is corruption, obviously, that's taking place. Of course, it will be denied by Boris Johnson and Matt Hancock. But we can see the writing on the wall here. It's quite easy to see. It's about Matt Hancock handing out contracts, somebody connected to Matt Hancock quite physically in a sense, making sure that relatives of hers, her brother in this case, received the contract. Erman, thank you so much for that super chat. Good evening, Max. I think before Matt Hancock is caught, Mr. Hancock is caught with his hands in the cookie jar, nothing will happen, and probably not even then. No, unfortunately, nothing is going to happen. Boris Johnson has just come out and said that he's going to stand by his Secretary of State for Health. So nothing is going to happen. It's interesting that the focus is mainly on the extramarital affair and less on the actual corruption here. Because, look, if Matt Hancock's wife knew about this, if the aide knew what was going on with Matt, well, she obviously knew Matt Hancock was married. If Matt Hancock's relationship is not going very well with his wife, that's their business. But the bigger problem here, of course, is corruption, where this lady's brother has contracts with the NHS, and obviously, if he wants to win contracts, he gets on the phone to his sister, give Matt Hancock something extra, so I can have this contract and make lots of money out of it. And obviously, perhaps, he helps Matt Hancock out some way, maybe gives him a backhander, or tells his sister to do something else. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. embracing an aide with his hand gripping her arse. Yeah, the language they have to use here. They act like they're the cast of Entourage. No one will be sacked. If one falls, they all fall. Yeah, but I've said before, Boris Johnson has an 80 or 81 seat majority at the moment, or maybe it's gone back down to 80 seat. So he's protected at the moment, for now. The Hancock whisper. Bojo will stand behind his Hancock. He definitely will. Are you suggesting his brother is a pimp? I don't know. I don't know. She's a cheap deal. It only cost him 50,000 for that slapper. Look, I don't know if there is real corruption here, but it does seem strange, no? That his aide, somebody who should be working for him, her brother owns a company that has won contracts for services to the NHS. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see the tendering process there, how they managed to win. My God, guys, some of the comments here on the chat are terrible. Get her to give Matt Hancock a backhander. That's one term for it. You guys are terrible. I'll give him a backhander. Did Hancock get a date as part of the trade deal? Maybe that's how it started out. Matt Hancock said, look, I'll give you a contract, Mr. What's his name? Coladangelo. And, Matt Hancock said, yeah, okay, what can you give me in return? He says, well, do you want some money? And Matt Hancock says, no, I have lots of that. But your sister looks quite cute. How about that? That's maybe how it worked out. I don't know. The Tories will only turn on Boris when they see that when he's a loser. When the economy is downhill, and they'll just replace him and pretend everything went on was nothing to do with them. Yeah, that's what's going to happen. And I've said this before, that the Tories won't get rid of Boris Johnson until he's pulling on them. And you would only see that if there were a string of by-elections and the Tories lost every one of them to the Liberal Democrats or to the Labour Party. Then you would see pressure within the Conservative Party to get rid of Boris Johnson and replace him, of course, with somebody who's equally bad, like Michael Gove. Your women, give us your women. Can we nickname him the Richard? That's terrible, inconsequential. Welcome to the stream. How does Hancock... It's Hancock, not Hancock. Sleep at night. Obviously, he doesn't do something else. He's doing something else, yes. He says he's working so hard, Anyway.
Roberto Coladangelo, who I understand is Gina Coladangelo's brother, is the Executive Director of Strategy and Innovation at Partnering Health Limited, or PHL Group, which specialises in the provision of urgent and primary care services to NHS patients. Now, there's no suggestion that PHL Group or Mr. Coladangelo has acted improperly in the procurement of government contracts. PHL is declining to comment so far on further details of those contracts.
See, if there's no direct contact, and if she's an aide, it's difficult to find a paper trail. It could be all word of mouth. Sorry, I shouldn't use these types of terms in this context. But you know what I mean. It could have been, sister, why don't you mention our company when Matt Hancock is talking about, who could we hire for this contract? That's probably how it worked. Not directly that the brother picked up the phone and said, Matt Hancock, give me this contract. I don't think it worked like that. Hancock jobs for jobs.
contracts while the Department of Health and Social Care has been approached for comment. Nevertheless, this disclosure will risk deepening the crisis engulfing Mr Hancock today. He's already been left weakened, of course, after allegations about his competence at tackling the COVID-19 pandemic that have been made in recent weeks by Dominic Cummings, Boris Johnson's former top advisor. As we know, Mr Hancock said earlier today that he had let people down and was very sorry, with the Prime Minister saying he considered the matter closed. But
I think the only way that Hancock would actually be fired was that if there's another wave, and in order to distract from the disaster, we're facing another wave. Boris Johnson, left the borders open and left it open for this new variant, the Delta variant. In order to distract the public once again, he may actually say, "Oh, look, we're going to get rid of Matt Hancock because he didn't do a good job. He should have actually closed the borders," and blame him in order to protect Boris Johnson and the government. Boris Johnson will throw anyone he doesn't like under a bus in order to protect himself. He's done it before, so he would do it with Matt Hancock. But he's probably holding Matt Hancock, holding him in a position until it's useful to throw him under a bus. But he probably will be thrown under a bus at some stage. Guys, smash that like button. I see lots of viewers, but not a lot of likes. Thanks to Conservator. Did she discover Hancock was another government flop? Oh my god, the comments tonight. To be fired, you have to light his touch paper. Hancock's chat up lines. I'll show you my PP if you show me yours. Oh my god. Holding him, you say. Watch your words. I'm trying to watch my words tonight, but everything just comes out. Has a double meaning, of course, not intentionally.
It may be the case that the disclosure of Mr Coladangelo's company's relationship with the NHS does make it more difficult for the health sector and, in fact, the government to shut this story down.
I think the government are using it as a distraction because isn't it interesting how did the Sun newspaper get this CCTV video? Who gave it to them? It sounds very strange that the Sun would get this. I think somebody leaked it to the Sun in order to embarrass Matt Hancock, but also to maybe to distract from what seems to be the case at the moment of rising cases. Organic sausage. What's that about? His wife is a disgrace to feminism. She used to be the first to tell any woman to leave their husband. Wow, I didn't know about that. I'm not familiar. Is his wife? She writes for a newspaper. No, I'm not. I don't remember. But she's not a politician. Anyway. This is from Channel 4 News. Just a little bit about what these people believe should happen. Let me maximize that.
Disappointing, frankly. I think the British public have borne a great deal of restrictions during the fight against COVID. But I think they get exasperated when they think that the rules that they are having to put up with aren't applying to other people. I live in Salisbury, Christian, and this week it's been very clear to me that people have been very upset at the special treatment that the UEFA bigwigs have been given ahead of the Euros. And I think the idea that government ministers can live by a set of different rules as well will really upset the public. And I think Matt Hancock should have resigned. He's been a good minister, in my opinion, overall. He could come back in 12, 18 months. It wouldn't.
What's good about him? You notice that they're focusing on the extramarital affair. They're not focusing on this contract or these multiple contracts that have been given out to friends of his, people he met down the pub, some guy who came over for drinks, his neighbour, I think it was. There's no mention of these. This is more important. I'm sorry, but whatever is happening in Matt Hancock's personal life, in a sense, is personal until he breaks the COVID rules. But if it was not breaking COVID rules, it would be a personal thing between him, this lady, and his wife. But and of course, there is also the issue that government should set an example. If you're not capable of doing that, they should resign. Even a moral example. I know it's absurd in this moment in time with Boris Johnson in charge, but generally they should be the ones setting an example. They claim to be the party of, or the people on the right seem to care about the family unit and the role of men and women in society. But then they act like this. Anyway, I'm more concerned about the corruption part of this. Why was Matt Hancock handing out contracts to people without a proper tendering process? Why were contracts handed out to people who were neighbours of his?
Necessarily be the end of his ministerial career, but the public should see ministers taking responsibility when they make mistakes of this kind.
What is the big crime? Is it the hypocrisy, or the questions over the woman's power in the Department of Health, with whom he was pictured kissing, or what?
I think that all the issues will run into each other, but I think the big thing is you've had this health secretary been standing up at the Downing Street lectern month after month, telling people some very uncomfortable rules are in place.
But Boris Johnson did exactly the same thing, and this guy hasn't asked for Boris Johnson to resign. When there was a meeting, I covered it on a live stream or in a video, I don't remember, but I've covered it before. It was last year when there was a Tory party meeting, I think it was the 1922 committee, and the room was full. Boris Johnson organised the meeting, and the room was full, and Boris Johnson even made jokes about how everyone was sitting cheek to cheek or something. Boris Johnson was responsible for that. Why didn't he cancel the meeting? Why didn't he tell people to go outside? He didn't. He should have. Did he resign over that? No, of course he didn't. Were there calls from people like this guy for him to resign? Of course there wasn't. These people are trying to distract. This seems to be, let's focus on the aide and his personal life and not focus on the perhaps corruption that's involved here.
Place that they have to abide by. Young people haven't been able to meet girlfriends or start, or boyfriends or start normal relationships. And when the health secretary doesn't himself abide by those rules, by his own admission today, and that he still stays in office, I think that's a real problem for not only his authority, but the government's wider authority.
Caroline Stokock, how does this compare to the old sex scandals of previous governments when you were serving government?
Well, I mean, obviously, things have changed. We no longer see a situation where Cecil Parkinson, for example, was forced to resign because he had an affair with his secretary and an illegitimate child. But of course, the reasons for that were double standards, that he was preaching about the importance of family life, but living a different life. And I think there is an issue of double standards here. But what I've seen over my long career, working in government and looking at ministers, close to and from afar, is a deterioration of standards in public life. And there's plenty of documents out there talking about integrity and honesty, and there's a ministerial code signed by Boris Johnson. But there was a time when
Boris Johnson signs ministerial codes. Peter, thank you so much for that super chat. After case, his aide will be going to Barnard Castle for a night test. Very good. I hope she drives or doesn't drive. I don't know which it was. Which was the idea? You're supposed to drive there or not to drive? I don't remember.
Ministers actually resigned when they were found out breaking these things, and that increasingly seems not to be the case. For example, Priti Patel was found to have broken the ministerial code on bullying.
The ministerial code means absolutely nothing. It means absolutely nothing because ministers are breaking it and nothing happens. And Priti Patel has broken the ministerial code twice. First when she was the foreign secretary, I think it was, where she was involved in providing information to Israel, I think it was. And then the second time was when she was bullying members of the civil service. And she didn't resign on either occasion. No, she was forced to resign, was it, the first time? But she's broken the ministerial code twice. But now the ministerial code doesn't mean anything because she didn't resign this time. She wasn't forced to resign. Boris Johnson has broken it. He's never resigned. Matt Hancock is probably breaking it here. He's not resigning. What's the point in having it? Like, just legalize everything. You know, they won't legalize the right things, and they won't criminalize the wrong things, it seems. Mark Sanders, thank you so much for that super chat. Cash for questions now, shags for NHS recommendations. But also cash works as well. Don't leave that out. Don't forget the cash. Some Tories prefer the cash. Thanks very much for that. But it is true. Maybe Matt Hancock said, look, I'm tired of cash. I want something different. You know. Oh my God. Pretty also broke out of her cage. You see the way she came up to the podium. Was one of the last times she gave a press conference. It's like she was really, really pissed off. And she was marching up to that podium and she slammed the documents on. It's like, you know, her poor aide didn't have the photocopies printed out in the right time and in the right order. And she got so pissed off about it. She wanted to demonstrate to the world that how pissed off she was. Ministerial code is obviously just for non-Tory governments, yes. Now see Hancock that is wearing a mask is important. Nobody would have known you were. Yeah, see, if he had been wearing a mask, he could have said, "That's not me. Who? That's not me. No. Looks like me, but it's not me. Can you see my face? No. There you go." Hancock wasn't the only pussy in the room for once. Terrible. What was the band called? We're all prostitutes. She's always pissed off. Yeah, Priti Patel is always pissed off.
But Boris Johnson said no, she wasn't really doing it, and therefore she didn't need to resign. And here, I think we do see a breach of the ministerial code. I think for example, ministers are supposed to behave appropriately in their working relationships, and this is clearly an inappropriate working relationship. And I think it's also an abuse of public money, or at least potentially so, because first he appointed her as an unpaid special advisor. And then after 6 months or so, she became a non-executive director in his own department. And the person who makes that appointment, who decides, is him. You know,
so she went from not earning any money to being a non-executive director. What a promotion. What did she do to get, up to that level? She must have worked really, really hard. She must have put in a lot of time. She must have, bent over backwards to do things for Matt Hancock's department. I really don't know.
She's entitled to £15,000 a year for that role, but she seems still to have been going around holding Matt Hancock's coat, for example, for Andrew Marr.
I thought she was going to say something else there.
Interviews. But her role there is to take a sort of supervisory role over the department's performance, to look at it strategically, and to, we don't know what the relationship was when he appointed her, but to have your mistress marking your own homework, which is essentially what's happening, shouldn't be the case, and she shouldn't be a backdoor special advisor either in that role. As soon as they started having that affair, it seems to me, she should have resigned. And that obviously hasn't happened.
Yes, well, she still hasn't resigned tonight either, to Montgomery. I mean, do you think that needs to happen? And also, isn't the real problem that Boris Johnson can't take the high ground? I mean, it's very difficult for him to sack Matt Hancock. Matt Hancock needs to resign.
Yeah, Matt Hancock definitely should resign. And I think Boris Johnson may feel that he can weather this individual storm. But as I think you're implying, there have been a number of individual storms surrounding a great number now of Tory ministers, and all of the individual cases may be individually defensible, but it's adding up to the Labour narrative that Labour have been working very hard to create, that this is a government.
I wanted to skip over that, but yes, she did say a backdoor advisor.
that somehow is a reminiscent of the 1990s, slightly sleazy, slightly unconcerned and cavalier with moral standards. And yes, moral values have moved on from the 1980s. They're different now, but people still expect proper use of public funds. They don't expect ministers to say one thing and do another. They expect the ministerial code to at least be respected. And yes, it may not be a fatal mistake for ministers to do these things. They can leave government for a period and come back later. But when no one ever sometimes doesn't even apologise, and when actually their careers just carry on regardless, that's a reputation the Tory party needs to be a lot more worried about, because one day it'll add up to a real upset in the public, and the polls will turn nastily against the Tories as they did in the 1990s.
Yeah, I hope the only saving grace here is that someone is a video on Pornhub yet. I haven't checked. I haven't done that research yet. Hancock on BJ will blame this on Labour or EU. See, her name is Marta Cordelangelo, so she's Italian. So Italian name. So she, European Union citizen. So she's a spy from the European Union. Maybe she's a friend of Ursula von der Leyen or someone like that, sent in to seduce Matt Hancock and rip his contracts off him. To undermine Boris Johnson's government. But Boris is ahead of the, he's not Captain Hindsight. He's ahead of the curve. He knows what's happening here. Better do that research behind the plants. Oh my God. I still can't get over the backdoor advisor.
And that's the danger for Boris Johnson.
Caroline Slowcock, do you think he's going to survive? Or is this just a matter of time?
I think my suspicion is that he will end up resigning, but I've been proved wrong on that before. It takes what does it take, I have to say, for a Conservative minister in this government to resign?
I said before, Boris Johnson could eat a baby live on TV, or he could eat a live baby on live TV, and he wouldn't resign. The only way Boris Johnson will kick him out, Berlusconi's hand-me-down, a leftover from the Bunga Bunga party. The only way he would resign is if he's forced out by the party. So the party, if he takes a lot of heat, but I think what's going to happen is, and I could be wrong here, but I think, Globe Twig, great to see you. I think what's probably going to happen is that if there's another wave, if cases start rising, and cases are going up all the time, and hospitalizations go up, Boris Johnson may need to impose a new lockdown, and if he's going to blame Matt Hancock for that, and Matt Hancock is going to resign over it. And that would be to protect Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson will have another day to survive, another day, as Prime Minister, but it will come out at the expense of Matt Hancock. So I think they're holding Matt Hancock around, keeping him around for when it's necessary to throw him under the bus, in order to take the blame for maybe another lockdown or something like that.
I mean,
Berlusconi. I love that.
He's already been told off for all sorts of things by courts for not revealing details of PPE contracts. A whole kind of raft of things. He's been caught out, for example, saying that the NEO said there were no problems with PPE during the COVID crisis, when that wasn't the case. That wasn't what they said. There's a succession of these things, and now this. What does it take? I mean, it comes down ultimately to character, and I think that the electorate do look at character. And of course, the man who will...
No, they don't. They don't look at character. Because they voted for Boris Johnson, a person with no character, a person with no morals, a person who was proven to have lied. And people said, well, I'm voting for him. I don't care if he lies to me. He's harming other people. Now, does that mean that Matt Hancock is going to be perfectly fine? Probably not. Does that mean that the Tories are going to be fine? Maybe not. But we've seen the electorate. The electorate don't really care about morals. They don't care about the ministerial code. They don't care about corruption. For now, it's during the pandemic, the vaccine has helped Boris Johnson, has kept him in number 10. But as we return to normal, I think people's priorities are going to shift. And maybe they're going to say, maybe the Tories aren't that great after all.
Will decide is Boris Johnson, a man who was sacked by Michael Howard some years back for lying to the press about his affair with another woman while he was married, and has got the Jennifer Arcuri shadow hanging over him.
Boris Johnson will not resign. Peter, thank you so much for that super chat. The only time Matt Hancock will resign is when he gets a moral compass and grows a spine. So that's probably never going to happen. Thanks for that super chat. So I don't want to focus too much on this story. I want to move on. We're almost halfway through the stream, so I actually might do the comedy moment now. So it's about Matt Hancock. Let me just copy it up here. Then we'll move on to the next topic.
Ramp it up.
Ramp it up.
Ramp it up.
Ramp it up.
Get on the fleet.
Ramp it up.
Like a protective ring.
Ramp it up.
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 Don't socially distance.
Ramp it up.
Bang your assistants.
Ramp it up.
Ramp it up.
Ramp it up.
Waste literally billions.
Ramp it up.
But make £1 count.
Ramp it up.
With this sexy Italian.
Ramp it up.
This is how much I care.
Ramp it up.
About lives in care homes.
Ramp it up.
Now you and me, babe.
Ramp it up.
We're down to the bare bones.
Ramp it up.
Buy PPE.
Ramp it up.
From some bloke at the pub.
Ramp it up.
Then I sneak into your office.
Ramp it up.
And give your ass a rub. Ramp it up.
Ramp it up.
Ramp it up.
Ramp it up.
Get on the fleet.
Ramp it up.
Like a protective ring.
Ramp it up.
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 Don't socially distance.
Ramp it up.
Bang your assistants.
Ramp it up.
Ramp it up.
Ramp it up.
Waste literally billions.
Ramp it up.
But make £1 count.
Ramp it up.
With this sexy Italian.
Ramp it up.
Oh, I actually repeated it twice. I thought it was the second time. Okay. Rather than throwing Hancock under a bus, he used him like a dead cat. Bus coming along shortly. I think so. I think it's going to be using Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson is going to use Matt Hancock as a distraction.
So the problem we've got is that the protocol is being implemented in a way.
Sorry about that. I hate when that happens. So let's move on to Brexit, of course, and Northern Ireland first of all, but then also this leads into Brexit, so I want to talk about that tonight. Thanks, Tom, for that super chat. Is it repeating? Sorry, it was repeating. Okay, let's... doesn't sound like Richard. So it was, I think. So it says here, the past 8 weeks have rocked Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionist Party to its core, perhaps terminally. So it's not surprising that most of the DUP have reacted to the unopposed election of Sir Geoffrey Donaldson as the party's third leader since Easter, with something like exhausted relief. Sir Geoffrey will be confirmed as leader on Saturday, but is already benefiting from a general sense that the recent period of fevered internal party turmoil, in which Eileen Foster and Edwin Poots were each removed, is short order, as DUP leaders could not be permitted to continue. So feelings remain high. However, it's possible that Sir Geoffrey's expected move against Northern Ireland First Minister Paul Givan, a Poots nominee, may rekindle the DUP civil war. It may therefore prove less bothersome if Mr Givan, installed only last week in a manoeuvre that backfired spectacularly on Mr Poots, stays on for a while. until Sir Geoffrey can join the Northern Ireland Assembly and take over. That depends on how Mr. Given and his more fundamentalist wing of the party, created by Ian Paisley in 1971, respond. A bitter radio interview by Mr. Poots last week suggests wounds are deep. So what's happening here is that the party, the DUP are splitting. It seems you have the hard unionists, the fundamentalists on one side, and then you have these more moderates on the other side. Now, which side Geoffrey Donaldson falls into, it seems he's more the moderate, but he has in the past been somewhat of a more conservative, it seems. Is he going to be able to bring the two sides together? Probably not. And what's interesting as well is that if Geoffrey Donaldson may have to give up his MP seat. He's an MP, he'll have to give up his seat in the House of Commons. There would be a by-election. And that could be very interesting because there's a possibility that the DUP could lose an MP to the Alliance Party. So the Alliance Party is a more moderate, centrist party in Northern Ireland. They're a non-sectarian party, so they're not like Sinn Féin or the DUP. And there's growing support for the Alliance Party in Northern Ireland. So the crucial issue facing the new DUP leadership is therefore the protocol. Running for the leadership a month ago, Sir Geoffrey pledged that he would vigorously oppose the protocol both in principle and in practice, but demands to abolish the protocol are not going to succeed. For one thing, the EU will never agree. For another, the majority of Northern Ireland voters want the UK to agree to regulatory alignment with the EU. So Sir Geoffrey's words will, when he was elected last week, calling for the UK and EU to step up and recognise the flaws of the protocol are significant. They could be the start of a more realistic but still challenging effort to steer unionist opinion away from insistence on the protocol's removal. I think maybe he's starting to realise, okay, if we continue pushing against the protocol, we're going to drive more people away from the party. It's not that they actually believe, okay, we should work within the protocol. They have been trying to flog this dead horse for a long time. They seem to think that attacking the protocol is going to fix problems, but it's not. It's just driving more moderate people within the DUP towards the Alliance and the Ulster Unionist Party, and the more extreme people who, are adamant about ending the protocol. They're deciding, look, the DUP is not the place for me. I'm going to join the more loyalist Unionist Voice Party, or whatever you call them, traditional Unionist Voice, I think it's called, which is more extreme. So the DUP could cease to exist at some stage in the near future if Geoffrey Donaldson isn't able to stop the leak. So maybe a more practical, pragmatic approach to the protocol may make more sense, to say, look, we have to deal with the protocol. We have to recognize the flaws, as he says here, step up and recognize the flaws of the protocol. So not ask for its abolition, but to have it reviewed. And that would make sense from a political point of view, because the protocol is not going away. Boris Johnson's not going to get rid of it. He has, humoured the DUP on numerous occasions, but at the end, he hasn't made any real significant moves to end the protocol. Yes, the grace periods have been extended, and this week the EU has agreed to extend them as well. But it's not a case that the protocol is going to be taken apart. Extending the grace periods makes it even more difficult to oppose the protocol, because if the heat has been taken out of the situation by extending the grace periods, then there's no real fight against the protocol. Because, if you're fighting the protocol saying it's stopping sausages from travelling from Great Britain into Northern Ireland, and then the grace period is extended, then the sausages travel from Great Britain into Northern Ireland. Then you can't. What are you arguing about? What are you protesting against? But this is the DUP, the party that campaigned for Brexit, voted for Brexit, and continued to support Brexit. I would really like to sit down and have a chat with somebody from the DUP and try and get inside their head and understand, why do you still support Brexit? Do you not understand that Brexit was a disaster for you? Kick the can down the road again. Yes, I agree, Reagan Elite. This is Boris Johnson saying, look, we agreed to do these things in the protocol. Last year he said, okay, we're going to do these things in the protocol. Okay. And then in December, it was like, can you give us some extra time to make sure we have everything in place for the end of June? And the EU says, are you sure you're going to have it ready for the end of June? Yeah, we'll be ready for the end of June. Sure. No problem. And then the end of June comes and they're like, actually, we're not. Can we extend it a bit more? And the EU says, okay. The only way that this can kicking can continue is if the UK remain aligned on this type of trade. So as long as the UK remains aligned, the can kicking will continue, because the UK is not diverging from EU standards in this respect. I don't know how long this can kicking can continue, but it will for the foreseeable future, I think. Reagan Ali, thank you so much once again for that super chat. Anyway, let's move on to next Brexit topic. I want to show you this. So it says here, Brussels to trap UK in decade-long negotiations over Northern Ireland Protocol, warns Yanis Varoufakis. So the UK has applied, so this is from the Daily Express, so you know where it's coming from, but it's an interesting article anyway. It says here, the UK has applied for an extension to the grace period, allowing chilled meats to continue being shipped from Great Britain to Northern Ireland after the end of this month, when the current arrangement is due to expire. Yanis Varoufakis has warned Boris Johnson that the European Union will make negotiations over Northern Ireland Protocol go on for decades. These are, okay, the first problem is these are not negotiations. So I don't know what the hell Yanis is talking about here. These are talks. There's a difference between negotiations and talks. The talks are on the protocol, implementing the protocol. There aren't negotiations. The negotiations took place 2 years ago. I'm not a huge fan of this guy because he tends to think he sounds like a Russian. No, he's a Eurosceptic, but on the left. But he was the former finance minister in Greece during the Greek debt crisis. And he's been extremely critical of the European Union since then. And he's been invited on many shows and he speaks to many newspapers. But I don't understand why, because he's not saying he's not an intelligent guy, he is, but he says a lot of crap. Speaking to the New Statesman, Mr. Varoufakis said, if you leave, you won't leave. You will be embroiled in a permanent negotiation with Brussels for decades to come after Brexit. But we said this, and I don't know what he's talking about, negotiations. About trade, yes, there will be negotiations because the EU realigns. So the EU changes its rules, changes its standards over periods of time. And if countries want to continue to align with those standards, there are negotiations, there are talks. But nobody said, none of us on the Remain side said that when the UK left, that there would be no relationship anymore, there would be no negotiations, there would be no talks taking place. Now, when it comes to the Northern Ireland Protocol, there are no negotiations. Those negotiations took place 2 years ago. What's happening now is the implementation of the protocol. But there's no negotiation. They're saying, Boris Johnson, which parts can you implement now? And Boris Johnson is saying, I can implement 1, 2, and 3. And then they're saying, okay, well, when can you implement 4, 5, and 6? And Boris Johnson is, oh, we're not sure. And there isn't a negotiation taking place. Boris Johnson has to implement it. Maybe they say, okay, we're going to give you a bit more time to implement those 4, 5, and 6. But it isn't a negotiation. What we're seeing now with the Northern Ireland Protocol is precisely that. It comes as Ireland is listening to those who have a real concern about the Northern Ireland Protocol and making the case strongly at the EU level for flexibility and pragmatism, the country's foreign affairs minister said. What's happening is the Irish government are lobbying on behalf of the British government. So they're basically begging the EU to give Boris Johnson's government some, not concessions, but some extra space to maneuver. And the EU is probably saying, okay, we'll do it on your behalf, but we're not doing it on Boris Johnson's behalf. If this is to protect the situation in Northern Ireland, okay, we're going to be, I don't like the word flexible because they're still wanting the rules to be implemented. We're giving them more time to implement the rules. But the rules are not changing. There's nothing happening in the protocol. There's no part of the protocol being suspended or being renegotiated. This is about time. But I've said also before how as the protocol is being implemented, things will move faster. You know, some checks may not necessarily be carried out because the systems will compensate for that. Or, for example, as I gave a stupid example before, you know, if there are trucks coming from a particular part of the country and you know those trucks don't contain a certain product, you have to check at the beginning, but later on you probably realize, okay, it's not necessary to check these trucks. They don't carry these types of products. You know, it could be these trucks are not refrigerated, then it's less likely that they're carrying refrigerated goods, something like that. But at the beginning, you probably have to check everything to make sure that you have the systems working, that they can check everything. Anyway, Simon Coveney said he hopes that the progress will be made in the sausage war trade dispute between the UK and the European Union in the next week. But he added that there will have to be adherence to what was agreed. Exactly. It's not that Boris Johnson is getting off the hook here. Boris Johnson has to implement the protocol. And he is implementing parts of the protocol. Boris Johnson is not suspending the protocol. As I said in the previous article, the DUP want him to do that, but he's not going to do that. The UK has applied for an extension to a grace period allowing chilled meats to continue being shipped from Great Britain to Northern Ireland after the end of this month, when the current arrangement is due to expire. Mr. Coveney said, I hope this week we will see progress between both sides on the request from the British government side for a modest extension to the grace period for chilled meats. And that has already been agreed. Let me read some of your comments. Casino Rab, I don't know what that's about. In her maths Secret Service, it was only a COVID health check. Boris is looking for bait. Those are not the trucks we're looking for. Oh, I love the Star Wars reference. Sausage War, Bozo Wiener Uprising. Dr. No featuring Lord Frost. That's a mistake from the EU. They should have concessions. The Johnson government will claim victory. I understand that, Stuart, but it's not. The EU is not. The EU is willing to give Boris Johnson. See, they're not actually giving him concessions, because a concession would be a negotiation where, okay, I'll give you this if you give me something in return. So there isn't really a concession here. I think really what's happening is the Irish government are calling up the EU and saying, you know, on the phone or whatever, or in a meeting, and they're saying, look, we'd really appreciate if you can extend these grace periods, because we don't want trouble in Northern Ireland, particularly in this period in July during the marching season. And I imagine the European Union officials are saying, the marching season, what's that about? They say, well, these crazy people put on costumes, they cosplay, and they cosplay as British people, and they march in the street and cause a bit of trouble. And the European Union officials are like, why do they do that? And they say, we don't know, it's just these people are insane. Anyway, would you mind extending the grace period so that Boris can avoid some nastiness with these people, and we can avoid some nastiness with these people too? We'd really appreciate it. We'll send you a bottle of Jameson if you do it. And they go, okay. And that's probably what. Okay, we'll give him. What if we give him another 3 months? But yeah. We'll do that, and hopefully he'll keep his nose clean between now and the end of September. And that's probably what happens. I think it's exactly what happened with the quote-unquote invoking of Article 16. The European Union were considering whether to invoke Article 16 of the Northern Ireland Protocol back in January, I think it was. And the Irish government got on the phone to them and said, no, don't do this. This would be a bad idea. And they didn't do it. They didn't actually invoke Article 16. They were considering it. And the Irish government said, no, this would be a bad idea. Don't do it. And they didn't do it. At the time, I called it a storm in a teacup. And that's all it was. It was a quote-unquote crisis that lasted about 3 hours. And then it was forgotten about on the European side because it didn't actually, in a sense, happen. Nothing really happened. It was an idea. It wasn't implemented. But on the Brexiteer side, it was, okay, they've invoked Article 16, now we have to do the same. And Boris needs to threaten to invoke Article 16 on numerous occasions in order to show, it was basically, on the Brexiteer side, a dick measuring competition. Or exercise or whatever. Matt Hancock licensed to fill. Not licensed to thrill. Please note that the EU do not give monkeys about their popularity. Exactly. The European Union don't give a crap about Brexiteers. Don't give a crap about the Express. Don't give a crap about what Brexiteers say about them. Because it has zero impact on them. It's like, if you found out that you have, I can't even think of an example. Carrying up the Brexit. I love the comments tonight. Bushmills not as nice as Jamison's. But Bushmills is Northern Ireland, so that's I think Sammy Wilson's favourite drink. They Brexicuted themselves. Mr. Dr. No PPE. Fantastic. Okay, let's move on to Lord Frost. Yay, my favourite snowman. So, well, as useful as a snowman. No, a snowman has more use. You missed our James Bond ones. I'm sorry, drums to the bass. He was a secret EU sausage checker. For the hands only. Carry on contracts. Let me jump back up and read some more of your comments. License to lie. No doctor and the lie spy and the lied spy. The Brexit is not enough. Geraldine, great to see you on the stream. You only lie twice. I love it. You only lie twice. That being Richard Tice, the head of the Brexit party. Nigel Farage is second in command. Well, my mouse has stopped working for some reason. Hey. No, why did that happen? Let me mess around with it. Maybe that'll work. Whoops. Okay, that's better. The matte and the golden backhander. Oh my god. In her Matt's Secret Service. Thunderfart. Lick and let lie. The Brexit is not enough. Oh my god, I love these. I shouldn't be going on with the stream, but I have to read. Corruption are forever. Imagine being a Brexiteer. License to kill 130,000 people in Boris Johnson's case. Hi Davey, great to see you on the stream. I hope you're well. So no goodbye English immigrants next month. That's a pretty bad situation. I've covered it on the channel about so many people who are in the queue, and there's a risk that they won't get accommodation, or they may actually be fired because they may not have settled status, or even though they're waiting for settled status. Sammy Wilson is on something strong with the Bushmills. Could he be on the same thing as Michael Gove? The White Dust. Matt Skyfall. Oh, I love it. Okay. I'm sorry, Max, I started the James Bond comment, right? No, I love it. Drums to the bass. Whoop. Okay, so Leave campaigners surprised by decay in relations with EU, says David Frost. This is absolutely hilarious. The deterioration in relations with the EU, partly driven by the Northern Ireland sausage war, has come as a surprise to those who campaigned to leave the bloc 5 years ago, the government has admitted. The Brexit Minister, David Frost, said that he had dreamed of a sovereign Britain which could set forth on a global mission while maintaining friendly relations with its neighbours. Why are you lying here? Surely you've read the Daily Mail, the Express, the Sun. What other rag, pro-Tory rag is there? The Spectator even. You've read these newspapers, while you're sitting, in the airport lobby waiting for the flight, waiting to board the flight or whatever. The absolute bile that's been poured out by these people, by these newspapers as well, about the European Union, a dictatorship, the EUSSR and stuff like that. How could this come as a surprise to you? He was speaking on the eve of an expected concession by the EU to agree to the UK's request for an extra 3 months to resolve the dispute over Brexit checks in Northern Ireland, including those on chilled meats, nicknamed the Sausage War. In a sign of a modicum of peace maybe breaking out, Lord Frost said, it's absolutely not part of our plan to be bickering with the EU, and hope it is part of our long-term plan either. And hope it isn't part of their long-term plan either. The EU is bickering. The EU doesn't bicker. The EU said, this is what you have to do. Implement it. But he admitted that this would only happen if tensions over Northern Ireland were settled. Until we've settled the Northern Ireland issue and put in place new balances, or the right balance, what balance is he talking about here? I don't know. I think it's going to be difficult to get relations on the right footing, what we want. But we absolutely do want that. He said, he told the think tank UK in a Changing Europe in an interview on Thursday night. Frost admitted that campaigners for Vote Leave did not anticipate the impact Brexit would have on relationships with countries Boris Johnson consistently referred to as our friends and neighbours. How do you call them your friends and neighbours, and then at the same time regard the European Union as anti-democratic, anti-freedom, corrupt, a dictatorship, holding Britain back, not allowing Britain to leave, forcing Britain to stay in the European Union? This is the type of language that they were using. Enemies of the British people. They regarded people like what was his name? Former European president of the European Commission. I've forgotten his name. The Polish guy. But also Angela Merkel and Angela Merkel and Ursula von der Leyen, describing these people as beasts, basically. But that's okay. Why would they be upset with us? Or, although they weren't. The EU doesn't operate like that. As one of the Commission spokespeople said, we don't have feelings. We just do what we're supposed to do. I don't think those who campaigned 5 years ago drove the analysis, drove the politics of it. They didn't. I think they are surprised quite often to find relations are in the state that they're in. But you're continually saying that the EU expecting more than that's in the contract. The EU have only said, please implement the protocol. You're not implementing the protocol. Why aren't you implementing the protocol? Can you please implement the protocol? That's your obligation. What if the EU... I'd love to know from David Frost or from Boris Johnson's government, what parts of the protocol can they not implement? I wish somebody would actually ask them that. You have a problem with the protocol. What parts can you not implement? The EU has asked you to implement it. Why can't you do that? What is the problem here? Can you please tell us what parts of the protocol are a problem? And then we can understand why you're having problems. But they never do that. The journalists never ask that question, and David Frost never explains what the problems of the protocol are. He only says the EU the EU are expecting too much, or the EU are not being pragmatic, or they're not being flexible. But he never actually explains what flexibility he's asking for, which is dishonest. But then that's David Frost. Asked if the British government had underestimated what sort of impact the protocol would have on the movement of goods, Frost hinted that this was the case. So he didn't know what he was signing. I don't see what is wrong with learning from experience. This is a very unusual agreement, and we've learned a lot about how the economic actors behave. We underestimated the chilling effect. So he's not saying we didn't know what we were buying into. It's like we didn't know how they would react. They said this is the contract. Implement the contract. David Frost is saying we didn't know that the EU would actually want us to implement the contract according to the contract. A committed Brexiteer, the Conservative peer said, unelected of course, said that he felt the UK had experienced a loss of will after decades in Brussels and had become subordinate to the centralisation of laws, even in areas where the UK had legal competence. But you gave when is he talking about? Is he talking about before Brexit or after? Because there was a period after when, during the transition period, the UK was not a member, but it had to follow the rules because it was part of the withdrawal agreement. It was part of leaving the European Union. The transition period meant that you followed the rules, but you had no impact on changing those rules. Is that what he's talking about? Something that, once again, he agreed to. The country had got used to not devising for ourselves, got lost in a mushy multinationalism rather than think about outcomes, he said. Okay. Asked what success would look like in 10 years' time, Frost said that this was it was a world in which we've settled in a more normal relationship with the EU. What is a normal relationship with the EU? Like as a third country, where no one has gone our own way in a number of areas. One where we have gone a number of ways in our own areas and succeeded. Nobody is questioning Brexit. It was evidently the right thing to do. Tell that to the fishing communities. Tell that to exporters. Tell that to the farmers that they shouldn't be questioning Brexit, and it was evidently the right thing to do. My God. Brexecution is a fantastic new word. We have sovereignty, yes. Just reading some of your comments. I think the EU intends to wait out the Boris Johnson government when Boris Johnson will have fucked up so badly. That's what's left in the UK will gladly rejoin the EU. I don't know about that, because when Boris Johnson is gone, he'd be replaced by another Tory. And that Tory will probably be a supporter of Brexit. May not be as a full-on dyed-in-the-wool Brexiteer, but he or she could be a supporter, of maintaining the status quo in a sense, which is we've left the European Union. It will have to be after that. It will have to be after the next election, when you have a new party in, and it could happen quite quickly, but it would require the renegotiation of trade deals that the UK has signed at the moment. There is a real fear that hi Era, great to see you on the stream. Sean Daly, great to see you too. I think there is and David Prosser, great to have you on. I think there is a real fear that what's happening is Boris Johnson's government is signing trade deals really quickly in order to move as far away from European standards as possible. I don't fully buy that. I think it's more of, I need to keep the public happy with Brexit. So if we sign trade deals quickly, doesn't matter what we put into them, it means that we're keeping the public happy. Because we won with Brexit, we have to continue to milk Brexit as much as possible. I don't think it's... Some people believe, some commentators believe it's Boris Johnson signing trade deals as quickly as possible to move further and further away. That could be true. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I buy more it as Boris Johnson needs to have something to show the public. Distract the public with this contract. And we've seen how, we've seen it with the Indian variant, the Delta variant, how Boris Johnson left the borders open because he didn't want to embarrass the Indian Prime Minister, Modi. Throwing British people under the bus in order for him to get his trade deal. That doesn't paint a picture of somebody desperately, moving away from, alignment with the European Union. That seems to me someone desperate to get some sort of piece of paper that he can hold up and say, I have, we've achieved victory in our peace in our time, or whatever. Oh my God. Okay. So there is an election coming up. Perhaps an important one. Actually, I want to show you a clip before we get to this article. This is quite worrying because in this by-election that's taking place in... what is the name of the place? Batley and Spen. The sister of murdered politician Joe Cox, her sister, she's running in this election as well. And unfortunately, when she was out campaigning, she's running for the Labour Party, obviously. When she was out campaigning, she was confronted by some people who, it seems, were George Galloway supporters. Now, she claims in this video that George Galloway was nearby and he was laughing about all of this, how she was being harassed by these people. George Galloway, I don't know if he was involved in this. I wouldn't be surprised if he was. George Galloway is a disgusting individual. He's an attention seeker. He doesn't care about people. He's willing to throw other parties under the bus in order to put himself front and center. He's willing to throw other people under the bus in order to put himself front and center. He's willing to align with horrible individuals in order to promote himself. But let's see what this report has to say.
Sadly, over the last sort of 24 hours, things have become slightly less civil. I was extremely intimidated.
Are you going to stand for those Muslim parents now?
Do you know what? I'm not going to stand. You shouting at me. The Muslim community of Batley and Spen deserve better than this. They deserve better than this.
We're the community. I'm asking you, are you going to support Muslim parents?
Do not walk away.
You don't want their children to learn about
Now, it seems that these people who are protesting or getting in our face are people who have been protesting outside schools, complaining that LGBT has been promoted in those schools. So these people are homophobes, basically, and bigots. And they have been protesting outside schools because they say what's being taught in the schools is degenerate and we don't want our children in these schools. So George Galloway it seems that he's on their side or they're on his side. I'm not sure exactly what's happening, but she alleges that later on that George Galloway was not that far away and he was laughing about all of this. This is Joe Cox's sister. This is not just some random politician. This is somebody whose sister was murdered by right-wing idiots, or an idiot in one in particular. George Galloway is self-promoter and will pretend to be a cat if needs be.
LGBT indoctrination question. Are you supporting us, Kim? Kim, I'm here. Answer the question. Why are you running? Kim, I'm here to talk to you.
Kim is
Are you
walking
going to
away.
support Muslim
Kim is
parents
walking away.
who don't want their children
I've
to
been
learn
here,
about...
I've been here 60 years of my life.
So
more
speak
than
to this
you.
gentleman.
Answer the man.
We are going
Answer
to
the man.
chase Labour.
Answer the man.
We are going to chase Labour at every step. We are going to chase Labour. We are going to out your lies. You are the colour of bread. He's right. The colour of blood. The colour of blood is what you are.
You're the colour of blood. Wow, that's that's a really good way to. Look, I wouldn't intimidate Boris Johnson. If I met Boris Johnson, I wouldn't try to intimidate Boris Johnson like this. I would try to have a conversation with Boris Johnson, try to understand why he voted or supported particular policies. I don't agree with this type of way. And also, she's a candidate. She's not a bloody politician at the moment.
It's been a tough day today, I have to be honest.
Or as far as I know,
we were out campaigning outside one of the local mosques, and then suddenly there was a big group of mainly men, I would say, who started shouting at me in the street, trying to say they were asking me questions, but they certainly weren't giving me any chance to answer any questions. Some of them not local. George Galloway was at the other side of the street laughing, and I was extremely intimidated, and this is not good for our area. This is not what people need. I don't need this. My family don't.
No, definitely not. And you have people like George Galloway who drop in. George Galloway is not from this area. Why is he running in this area? Why isn't he running in his own town? Is it because he wouldn't win a seat there? Why is George Galloway campaigning in this area? Why isn't he campaigning for someone from the local area?
Don't need this, and our community doesn't need it. That is not how politics should be done. We need debate, we need discussion, we probably need disagreement, but we don't need abuse and we don't need intimidation. But I am worried about some of the more sinister elements of other people's campaigns, shall we say. And it's very upsetting to think that other people think they've got a right to come in and cause disruption and sow division. It's the last thing this community needs.
Labour is really finished. No, Labour have been making a lot of mistakes recently. I hope that she wins her seat. I think it's more likely to go to the Conservatives. I really don't understand why, but it seems likely that the Conservatives are going to win it. But George Galloway is there to split the vote because he wants to give the Labour Party a bloody nose, it seems. He wants to punish the Labour Party. Punish the Labour Party by getting the Tory in power. Now, I've said this before. When it came to Joe Biden and Donald Trump, I said, if you don't vote, it's a vote for the incumbent. So I think in this seat, the current incumbent, I haven't checked, but I think the current incumbent is a Tory. Or maybe it's a risk that the Tories are going to win the seat. I don't remember. But George Galloway is helping the Tories by splitting the vote. What we need to do is we need to work together to keep the Tories out, to stop the Tories from winning these seats. There's a likelihood that she will not win the seat and a Tory will win it. And then what will George Galloway do? He will feck off back up to Scotland or wherever he's living at the moment, and he will complain about the Labour Party not representing the people and how the Conservatives don't give a crap about people, and his sycophants will continue to support him, unfortunately. Galloway was an MP once, not for a long time. He's an exploitative narcissist, sorry. Punish the Labour Party. That's not been in power for 11 years. Yes. Battle in Spain is going to be brutal, whoever wins. The incumbent won the mayoral election. Did George Galloway back Corbyn? I can't remember. I guess he did. Yeah, no, he was a supporter of Jeremy Corbyn when he was in the Labour Party, as far as I know. But then he left the Labour Party some years ago before Corbyn became leader. Galloway lives in England, but he has a massive problem with the SNP. I really don't understand his problem with the SNP. He doesn't want Scotland to become independent, so he's aligning himself with the Conservatives in Scotland to make sure that the SNP don't get into power. Now, the SNP, look, even if you don't agree with them on independence, what about their social policies? Would you prefer the Conservatives when it comes to social? This is what I don't understand. George Galloway is pretending to be a socialist. He's someone who cares about the working class. And then he's convincing people to vote for the Conservatives in Scotland. Like, let's park the independence for a moment. You know, why would you vote for a Conservative in Scotland if you're working class? That doesn't make any sense to me. But it didn't make any sense to me voting for a Conservative in England either, or in Wales. I was going to say Northern Ireland, but there are no Conservatives in Northern Ireland. Or very, very few. Well, there is a party, but it's tiny. So I just wanted to show you, this is some comments from voters, potential by-election voters. It says, they're all lawyers. Labour voters look elsewhere in Batley by-election. Okay. Look, I don't care about the person. I don't care about even so much their personality. I don't care so much that Boris Johnson ruffles his hair and acts like a buffoon. What you're voting for, it should be, is on policy. What are the policies? These people are going to turn around and say, I don't like them because they're lawyers, I'm going to vote for the Tory. This is what happens. My brother was a miner, my dad was a builder, my mum was a barmaid who worked in the mills, I was a nurse. We're not going to vote anybody. We're not going to vote for anyone but Labour. Are you? Cheryl Rowan, 62, is just the type of voter that the Labour Party is desperately trying to hold on to in next week's by-election in Batley and Spen. And in their former northern heartlands more generally. She lives in one of the small row council houses in Heckmonwick, a town formerly known as for manufacturing blankets as part of the West Yorkshire heavy woolen district. The industry has long gone. There are no shoe factories, no textiles. We were a northern powerhouse, but now we ain't got anything but restaurants. And a new swimming pool that's getting built that you can't work at, and care. There are no jobs. Rowan says, across Batley and Spen, almost 1 in 3 adults are economically inactive. 1 in 3, compared with Britain's average of just 1 in 5. However, house ownership is high in this town. 71% of residents own their houses, and 60% of homes are detached or semi-detached. This is what's important that the Labour Party need to remember. Homeowners will generally vote Tory because they care about house prices. They care about the value of their house dropping. And if they see massive developments coming in, or if they see massive shifts to social housing, I'm not saying that the Labour Party shouldn't do this, but they should be aware of it. And it may be necessary to have different policies in different parts of the country. You know, you say, okay, this is a district where the people care about house prices, then we need to be aware of that. Like when you have a high level of ownership, there's a risk that these people will vote Tory because they're afraid that their house price will drop. Many people see the house not just as something they can sell, but something they can pass on to their children. And if they see, you know, a party that's not looking after that aspect, then they'll vote for another part. If they see a party that's not looking after that, then they'll vote for someone else. Known as Hecky, the town is politically significant battleground. In this by-election, Labour managed to hold on to the ward in May's local elections, but the Conservative Party doubled its votes. Kim Leadbeater, the Labour candidate, and her older sister Jo Cox grew up in the town and were well known here. James Pickles, 34, and Samantha Dawkins, 30, remember Cox visiting the primary school that their 2 children attend, and are pleased to support Leadbeater. They both lost their jobs at the beginning of the pandemic and said that they can understand why locals like to fight against power by voting for other candidates. but they tend to remain loyal to Labour. So we can see here how the vote went in over the last number of elections. So you can see the Labour has held on to it, but Labour's hold is weakening. So you can see here other, I'm not sure what other party there is. But of course we get to George Galloway. So George Galloway's entry into the race means Labour. So what's going to happen? As I said, Labour is going to struggle here because of George Galloway. George Galloway is going to split the vote. George Galloway's entry into the... But, you know, and I'm not an advocate of a two-party system, but this is first past the post. This is not proportional representation. If this was proportional representation, the more parties the better. But this is not the case. This is first past the post, where every vote is necessary in order to keep the Tories out. George Galloway's entry into the race means Labour. The Labour campaign has also tried to turn to foreign policy issues important to Muslim voters, who make up 1/5 of the community. Rowan said she has good relations with her Muslim neighbours to check in on her and deliver food during the festive religious festivals, but she dislikes this focus. The election is about the town, it's not about Palestine and Israel. Why bring that into it? And this is what I see on, for example, Novara Media, where they're saying, look, the Labour Party are not focusing so much on Palestine and Israel. And it's, you know, this is something I really don't understand. Why would it be important to focus on Palestine or Northern Ireland, for example? Why would you focus on Northern Ireland as an issue in a town where they have one MP? This is a campaign for one MP. I hope George Galloway gets a good drubbing and disappears again. I hope so too. Galloway bombed in Scotland. Don't think that he will achieve his goal. His goal is not to win. His goal is to split the vote. And he may achieve that. He's, he seems to be popular with the Muslim community in these towns. I don't know why. They believe that he cares about them. He doesn't. He cares about himself. He'll use them. Or introduce proportional voting. Then you can vote whoever you want. Yes. Galloway never shuts up about Palestine and Israel, because he knows he can use it. He knows it's like it's a bit like Farage with Brexit. He knows, okay, there are certain issues that as long as I keep talking about them, people will listen. Galloway is the same. Galloway though doesn't need to get many votes to let the Tories in. No, that's what he's there for. I don't know whether he's actively working with the Tories or he just wants to use it as an opportunity to boost his own profile. Other white voters cite this as a reason for not supporting Labour, such as Lisa James, 50, who works in sales management pre-pandemic and is now a home carer. I don't believe that the Labour candidate got the interests of Batley and Spen at heart. I think she's more about foreign policy, James says. She will also vote Conservative next week. My dad would probably turn in his grave if I voted Tory, but there you go. But why? Why? This is something I don't understand. You don't actually have to vote. There isn't compulsory voting. Like, I really don't understand sometimes. People say, look, I don't want to vote for the Labour Party, so I'll have to vote for the Conservative. You don't actually have to vote. You can sit at home. It would be better for you to sit at home than to vote for the Conservatives. Because if you used to vote for Labour, if you stay at home, Labour lose the vote, but nobody gains the vote. If you come out and vote for the Conservatives when you used to vote for Labour, that's like 2 votes against Labour, because they lose the vote and somebody else, their enemy, gets the vote. That's why it'd be better if you don't like the Conservatives and you don't like the Labour Party, just stay at home. Once again, I don't advocate for this generally, because in a proportional representation system, no, I would tell people to go out and vote. But voting to punish the Labour Party, how is that going to work? I'm going to make sure that the Tory gets in, because then the Labour Party will start listening to me. No, they won't do that. It doesn't work like that. They'll go, oh, how come we lost that constituency? Well, we'll think about something next time. Another issue that that many parties have been keen to avoid becoming focused on is the controversy that erupted when a teacher at Batley Grammar School was suspended after showing an image of the Prophet Muhammad to a class, prompting protests outside the school gates. An investigation cleared the teacher of causing deliberate offence and lifted the suspension while apologising for distress caused and recommending further training for teacher staff. I'm sorry, I'm against this. Okay, I know I'm going to probably piss off some people, but I don't care. If Muhammad has a problem with somebody showing his picture, then Muhammad should come down in person and explain why he has a problem. If he's not capable of doing that, it could be for two reasons. One is he doesn't care. Three reasons. One is he doesn't care, so then it's okay to show the picture. The other is he's not capable of doing that for some reason. Then why is he so important? And the third is he probably doesn't exist anymore, so we shouldn't give a crap. Okay, I'm really... Maybe I'm sounding a bit like Douglas Murray or someone like that. Not Douglas Murray. Douglas... I don't remember the guy, the right-wing guy. Murray. I don't remember his name. I think it's Douglas Murray. Not Douglas Ross, Douglas Murray. But maybe I'm sounding like that, or Sam Harris. I don't want to sound like these people. But it's a frigging image. If somebody showed a picture of Jesus Christ, people don't have the right to protest or cause disruption or get someone fired over it. If you don't like it, that's your problem. Is someone being offended? Directly being offended? Like, the only person who could be offended by this is Muhammad. But Muhammad is not coming down from the sky and complaining about it. That would be my... It's like, you think Muhammad is being offended by this. Okay, Muhammad, are you being offended? I know I sound maybe stupid here by saying this, but are you being offended? No, I don't hear anything. So either he can't communicate because he's not able to, he's not communicating because he can't, because he's not bothered, or he's not communicating because he doesn't exist anymore. So then, case closed, let's move on and let's start talking about things that exist in reality. Really, I'm sorry, it pisses me off. I'm not a fan of religion, as you can imagine. Any religion, okay? If people say, oh, you shouldn't have, statues in the church or whatever, I don't give a crap. I actually like... The only thing I like about religion is the art, because it's beautiful art. But I like it because of its beauty, not of its content. Anyway. Rant over. Oh no, we're having buffering problems, are we? Or I'm getting off track. Anyway, another issue. Sorry about the school, yes. However, according to Paul Halloran, the Independent, who stood for election in the constituency in 2019, it is the most important issue in this election. Holloway made the claim that at a rally at the self-described free speech activist Lawrence Fox on a Thursday night. Now, I don't agree with these people, because this is not so much about free speech. This is about religious influence. Because these people don't really care about free speech. They pretend to care about free... Lawrence Fox doesn't care about free speech. He doesn't understand free speech. Because as soon as somebody turns around and says, well, let's start talking about the history of Britain involving the slave trade, these people say, no, stop talking about that. We don't want to censor that. Stop talking about it. Stop allowing these people to speak about the UK having a history involving slavery. So these people don't care about free speech. They care about things they like, and they want to censor things they don't like. And they complain about free speech when they think they're being censored, when in reality they're not being censored. They're being told, stop being a dick. Stop being an idiot. Treat others with respect, okay? And this is not about respect in people's idea. I'm saying here clearly, Muhammad, you say Muhammad doesn't like pictures of him being displayed. Okay, who's being affected if there's a picture of Muhammad? You or Muhammad? Because if you're having a problem, then we can have a talk about that, you know. But if Muhammad has a problem, then Muhammad can easily, I'm sure, he's a prophet, he has a lot of power, he's up in heaven, he came down on a horse or whatever, he can do that again and explain to me why he doesn't like people showing his picture around. Maybe I don't know, does it make him look fat or something? I don't know. So he says, no, please don't show these pictures. And then if he can give us a good reason why we shouldn't be showing his pictures, like, you know, it's embarrassing, or, you know, he wanted to lose weight before the photograph or something, or the painting, the painting, then that's fine. We can say, sorry, Muhammad, it was, it was rude of us to do that, to infringe upon your privacy. We won't do it again. There, finished. Is there a Muslim on the stream that agrees with Mac's statement? Different kind of broken Max tonight. No, I'd laugh if Muhammad randomly appeared on the stream to talk about his image. Max, I don't think you should go on like this, to be honest. No, I'm sorry. Look, this thing really annoys me, because as someone who's I'm against religion, organized religion. If people want to worship something, I have no problem with that. But when they use it as a tool, a political tool, to infringe upon others' liberties, then I have a problem. When it's used as a tool to poison the minds of young people, I have a problem with it. And I don't care if it's Islam, I don't care if it's Christianity, I don't care whatever the religion. I care about reason, I care about debate, I care about arguing someone's point. If you believe something is correct, you should be able to argue that. There should be no decision by fiat, or there should be no imposing opinions upon others. Anyway, back to George Galloway. George Galloway, so it says here, praising Halloran, around 12% of those in 29 voted to it. Okay. Galloway, who had previously told The Guardian that people have the right to defend religious sensibilities, and be offended by gratuitous, erroneous insults, said that at the rally that the full report of the investigation into the matter should be published so that the people can work it out whether or not they reached the right conclusion. Okay, so he's just a demagogue, basically. Not a big fan of George Galloway, as you can imagine. Okay, let's move on. Moving from one person who's fallen from grace to another person who's fallen from grace.
I was really...
So this is someone I actually used to admire, Andy Burnham, the mayor of Greater Manchester, but unfortunately... no, this isn't George Galloway. But unfortunately, I've grown to dislike Andy a little bit because of some comments that he's made recently. Well, some comments back in 2016 that surfaced when he was a member of Parliament. He brought up the issue of immigration, saying, yes, Brexit would be a good idea because we need to control immigration. Immigrants coming into the country are driving down wages. Now we're seeing the consequences of Brexit when immigrants are not allowed to come into the country. Fruit is rotting in the fields. Farmers are having to reach out to British people, and many of those British people can't or don't want to do the jobs. This is the consequence of the Brexit that I don't know if Andy was a supporter of, but when he was in the House of Commons, he seemed to be a supporter of it. Now, recently, he also said we need to embrace Brexit. I completely disagree with him on that. You don't embrace negative things. You deal with them. You work within the confines of them. You don't embrace, in the same way, we don't embrace the pandemic. We deal with the pandemic. Anyway, this is what he said recently when he had a bit of a tiff with the Scottish government.
Disappointed on Friday that the First Minister of Scotland just announced out of the blue, as far as we were concerned, a travel ban, saying that people couldn't travel from Scotland to Manchester and Salford, and people couldn't go the other way. You know, that is exactly what the SNP always accused the Westminster government of doing, you know.
Okay, but they are the government of Scotland. They have to limit the access people outside Scotland have to get into Scotland. Like, he goes on later to say, you know, there are higher cases in Dundee than there are in Greater Manchester or in Bolton. But that's not the point that's relevant here. they are responsible for Scotland. They're not responsible for other parts of the country. Matt, thank you so much for that super chat. Personally, I'm more inclined to declare a fatwa on you for showing Andy Burnham's image. What a letdown this man has become. Disappointing. I understand, and I will have it removed as soon as possible. Thanks for that super chat. Yes, I'm disappointed with Andy. Is that right? Andy Gallagher. No, but this Scotland and England are separate. If Scotland are imposing restrictions, it's stopping people from coming into Scotland. I'm sorry that maybe you feel that it's been focused on you, but it's not been directly focused on you. It's like these areas, we don't want people travelling from outside Scotland into Scotland unless it's absolutely necessary, unless it's for a medical emergency or a funeral or something like that. I'm pretty sure that's permitted, or maybe it's not, but I'm sure that there are certain conditions that are permitted. But this is not about getting back at Scotland, getting back at England or something like that. He's really going off the deep end here.
Just kind of riding roughshod over people. The SNP are treating the north of England with the same contempt in just kind of bringing that in without any...
What do you mean contempt? Is not allowing people to come into the... Is that like if here in Italy we border with Austria, and during the pandemic the Austrians closed the border. Is that because they were treating the Italians with contempt? Or they said, actually, we don't have a problem with the Italians, but we have a problem with the pandemic. We need to limit the spread of the pandemic from Italy into Scotland. It didn't mean that there were no cases in Austria. Sorry, from Italy into Austria. It doesn't mean that there were no cases in Austria. There weren't. Yes, there were cases, but it made sense at the time to limit people's access across the border. Now, I know there's a difference between Scotland and Austria, but I think the argument still stands here. Nicola Sturgeon, has a responsibility to protect her people in this sense, and it makes sense to say, look, people from north of England, please don't come across the border.
Any consultation with us.
Can I gently suggest to you that disappointed doesn't quite capture your mood when you heard that? You were furious, weren't you? How did you feel when you saw Scottish football fans dancing and partying in the streets of London when they're banned from the streets of Manchester?
Well, I just think it's double standards.
But Boris Johnson is responsible for England. Although England doesn't have its own parliament. But like Boris Johnson could say, look, Scotland, you're not allowed to send people across the border. But he didn't. It's not double standards because there isn't a restriction on London. If there was a restriction on London, then you could say it was double standards. But there isn't a restriction on people moving into or travelling to London. One side has a restriction and the other doesn't. That's not a double standard.
Simple as that. It's hypocrisy because they've done to us exactly what they always complain that the UK government does to Scotland.
What do you mean? We said one is dealing with the pandemic. Like I think he's attempting to mix other issues here, where the Scottish government are doing something like I don't know, rolling out a new, I don't know, not healthcare, something, I don't know, some program, and the UK government says no, you can't do that, or let's go directly to the referendum. Scotland wants to hold a referendum, and the UK government says no, you can't, and the Scottish government, yes, but you held a referendum for Brexit, and we weren't able to say no to that. Yeah, but that's different. Like it's a different. This is completely different here. It's about protecting lives. Stopping the spread of this pandemic. Does Andy not want to stop the spread of the pandemic? I'm sure he does. Why is he jumping on this board? Why is he fighting on this hill? I don't understand it. Look, in some ways, Andy is a good politician. I agree with him on many things. I think I would agree with him on many social issues, 100%. But he really has some terrible blind spots, I think. Never trust his eyebrows. That was very mean, old shorts. Okay. Well, we're almost at the end of the stream, so I just wanted to... where was it? I wanted to share this story with you. So we're staying with the pandemic, but we're almost at the end. West End is on the brink of collapse, theatre owner warns Boris Johnson. One of Britain's most influential theatre owners has challenged Boris Johnson to walk down the Strand and feel the pain as industry leaders pile pressure on ministers to release the findings of their live event pilot scheme. Sir Howard Panter, the co-founder of the world's largest commercial theatre company, Ambassador Theatre Group, and the UK's largest operator, Trafalgar Entertainment, said the situation in the West End was intolerable and that a host of businesses were on the brink of collapse. In a direct appeal to the Prime Minister, he said, "I challenge Boris to walk down the Strand past my office and feel the pain of pain of half to 3/4 of all premises being closed. Which ones of those does he think is coming back? There is no activity in one of the main thoroughfares in one of the main cities in our country." His comments come as criticism mounts on the government's failure to publish research into its live event pilots, which many in the industry had been hoping would come last week. The analysis is expected to show that venues have managed to limit the spread of COVID, and it's expected to provide a blueprint on how events could return once restrictions are lifted across the UK amid questions over whether they can still have to enforce mask wearing and will be allowed to sell food and drink. Documents that form part of the analysis leaked to the news site Politico earlier this week. They suggested that any restrictions that could prove hugely damaging they suggested that restrictions at all could prove hugely damaging to the live events industry. So it seems that of course they want to get back to normal. The government have not released information about this, which is worrying, because if they had, I think if it was good news, they would say, yes, you can start reopening following these guidelines. Now, there's two possibilities. The news is, no, it's not good, or they couldn't really be bothered to carry out the research completely, or they're sitting on the report for some other reason. Andrew Lloyd Webber's rubber face has been all over the news. Rubber face. Oh my God, UK theatre dying. Perhaps the one upside of COVID. That's mean. The results of those pilots are no longer valid, says Globe Twig. Is it because they were carried out so long ago? Who goes to a theatre? The rich upper class go to the theatre. The Tories are increasing wages. See, this is something I said before. The pandemic will reorganize our society. We've seen it with some businesses. Now, some businesses have forced their staff to go back into the office, but many businesses have decided, look, it's cheaper for us to have people work from home, and many people would probably never return to an office or return in a very limited way. What's going to happen is more and more people are going to work from home. More and more people are going to, if they're allowed that, going to move to live outside large cities, to smaller villages, or even to the countryside. And you're going to see a change in our society along those lines. You're going to probably see fewer and fewer skyscrapers, in a sense, because it's no longer necessary to concentrate people in city centres, because people don't want to live in city centres. People don't want to live in really expensive properties that have very few services. People would prefer to live out in the countryside, maybe, or in a small village where life is a bit more relaxed. Of course, not everyone wants that. Many people want to live in the centre of the city where all the resources are available, the services are available. But that's, of course, changing as well, because more and more people moving out, fewer services are available. will it reorganize society in the first galactic empire? I love these quotes. The UK creative industry was really powerful. Many workers were freelance and have been shafted. I think that's the big problem is that, as you said, yeah, many are freelance. They're not. They don't have contracts, and many of them I don't think were able to get access to the furlough scheme. So they were kicked. They were kicked in the teeth when it came to the pandemic, and they were also kicked in the teeth when it came to Brexit, because many of them aren't able to tour as they were before. I feel really sorry for people in the theatre industry or the music industry. I'm not talking about the people at the top. I'm talking of obviously at the people at the bottom who, travel hundreds of miles to do a gig and, end up walking away after expenses and everything have been taken away with 20 quid. But they do it because they love it. But there isn't enough real support for that. I get the distinct impression the Conservatives aren't very good for the UK. Really? Just now? You're late to the party, dude. Welcome to the party, dude. Who was it that said that? My partner loves the theatre, and then they reopen. When they reopen, I plan on taking her again. That's very nice of you, Reagan Elite. Freelance performance industry double hit. What's happening here a lot, I was actually, Mrs. Max and I were out last night, we were just walking, and we heard some music in the centre, and there was an open air theatre in the centre. It was provided free by the artists, which, was nice, but of course it's not sustainable like that. But I would be fully on board with paying a little bit more in tax if we could provide more of these things. And as we move to a UBI, we move to a UBI. We have to move to a UBI. You're probably going to see more artists providing more entertainment for people free of charge, because they will have received their UBI. They'll be able to live on that, and then they'll be able to say, look, I'm going to work for free, or I'm going to provide courses for people who want to learn to play the guitar or the violin or play the flute or whatever. Things are going to change with a UBI. You said UBI. I knew I had to trigger a few people with UBI. There we go. Okay, guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. Thanks very much for turning up tonight. Greatly appreciated every support that you provide. Remember, you can, as always, you can hit me with a super chat, or you can support the channel also by becoming a patron. We've got a few new patrons. That's great. And when you become a patron, you have access to Discord, and there's a lot of fun taking place over there. So do consider it. If you can't, don't worry. I understand. Many people are going through a lot of difficulty at the moment, and that's completely understandable. So if you can't afford that, don't worry. You can also help the channel by sharing videos on social media, especially on Facebook. I get a lot of views from Facebook. I don't know where these groups are hidden within Facebook. I'd like to pop in and say hello to some of them if I could. But a lot of views come from Facebook, so from social media, that's a great way to help the channel. So do share it on Facebook if you're on Facebook. Normally the older people are on Facebook. The young people are on TikTok. I need to get on TikTok. No, you wouldn't like to see me on TikTok. Matt Greek, thank you so much once again for that super chat. UBI now. Just want to say thanks for the stream, Max. Call all these super chats my Discord contribution. Thank you very much. Another good one. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thanks so much for that. You rock, Matt, as always. So we'll just finish. This is an old video, but I think it's suitable for today, this week, because it talks about Matt Hancock.
You stop it. Do you want to go with me? Please just leave me alone. Leave me alone. So, my name's Sandra. Just want to talk to you about... Can you just leave me alone, please? Just a night out. Try to do my job. Just leave me alone. Do you want to come out with me? My woman here. Just try to do my job. I'm only asking you. Just step back. You creepy bastard. Do you want to come on a date? You're just creepy. Do you know what I've got in the house? I've got wee clowns in the house, right? And then I colour in their faces. And then I put wee lips on them. And then I kiss them. You can come and see that if you want. It's just wee clowns, it's cushions. Holy fuck, but it's cushions that are clowns with makeup on them. It's dead easy if you just want to come and see them. Come to my house. No, don't want to. Come to my house. I don't want to. I don't want to come to your house. Can you just leave me alone? I don't want to see your creepy cushions, your clowns or your cans of cider. Thanks very much.
I remember this original video and I was like, this is the creepiest thing ever. And Matt Hancock has something in his pocket, it seems. He has a rocket in his pocket for this lady, it seems, which was extremely uncomfortable as well because her body language was. I think it was one of the first videos I uploaded on the channel. Somebody had commented on it today, so I hope you enjoyed that. Matt Hancock, as creepy as always. So, guys, thanks once again for coming on the stream tonight. Thanks for all of the super chats, greatly appreciated. Thanks to the moderators once again for doing a fantastic job keeping the trolls at bay as always. So I hope everyone is having a great weekend. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, and I will see you all same bat time, same bat channel on Tuesday at 9:30. Same bat time, same bat channel. So have a great weekend, guys. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Good night.